we adopted Jesse, and I did the initial adoption, and in fact, we were the first gay couple in Onondaga County to do a second parent adoption. Jack did the second parent adoption. And now things have changed a lot, where, right through Department of Social Services, I have friends who adopt as couples, be they men, be they, women. So times have changed a lot, but we were at the very beginning of that. He was very bright, very energetic, always intense, an intense kid. Smart, caring, always a very caring kid. I remember one time when he was very young, there was a thunderstorm, and he came in bed with us because he was afraid, and we, I tried to comfort him and say, explain the weather and what was happening. And he wouldn't settle down until he started asking about all his friends. Well, is Emmy okay? Is Shay okay? Like he needed to know everybody else was okay. And that's very typical of Jesse. He's a very caring person. Maybe in some ways too caring, I think, if there is such a thing. But I think he, gets hurt sometimes because of that. He was always. He was very eclectic in the kinds of things he liked to do. I mean, he would. He loved cooking and playing school and playing teacher and doing that kinds of stuff.
I was really happy as a child, actually. My dad told me that all the time, that I was, consistently smiling for, the first 4 years of my life. I was always really friendly and, would go up to random people in the park and be like, do you want to play with me? But when I was, maybe 6 or 7, I asked my dad if he thought that I could be trans, and he said no.
I mean, we didn't raise him in any kind of gender mode, very, a strict gender mode, but he also had the kind of personality that was very fluid with those kinds of issues, so he could rough and tumble with the best of them, but also spend a lot of time, playing that he was cooking something and preparing dinner. So he was kind of across the board on that. I don't know that, in the stereotypical kinds of, I don't know that you you certainly would have referred to him as, little girly girl, femmy stuff, with his Barbie dolls and everything. That was not, but he played with his baby dolls, he played with some of those kinds of things, but it wasn't that he was a real tomboy, it wasn't that he was a real girl. He was just very fluid with that kind of stuff, which felt very comfortable. Mm-hmm. It felt like he was who he was, and we didn't put the kinds of expectations of this is the way you have to play, or this is the way you have to be.
I started, I think, when I went through puberty, I was like, something is not correct about this. Because then it was, more obvious, because bodies are changing in ways that really put a schism between the two genders. So it was very clear to everyone that I was female, and so that was obviously uncomfortable for me. So I think probably around then.
Okay.
I came out the summer after 8th grade ended. I had gone to Pride, and I had done a drag show, and so I had to bind in order to be in the drag show, and it's a super uncomfortable thing to do, but I was so much more comfortable in that state. And I came home from Pride, and I sat my dad down, and I was like, I think that I'm trans, and I want to transition. And I mean, they were fine with it. My dad had didn't have a problem with it, but it was just hard for him to understand, just because he didn't really get what it meant.
And that's interesting, because we wind up attaching so much of gender kinds of things, how someone behaves to it, And with Jesse, it wasn't like he was this. It wasn't that he was really into being tough and butch and tomboy and all that. But clearly, body issues were not the. I don't. And even later on, I remember him saying that he would have trouble when people would compliment him on how beautiful he was, and he didn't quite understand that, because why would I get upset? Anything that drew attention to him being female was painful for him, and I don't think he even understood it, and we didn't understand it yet. I remember twice when he was younger, him saying something to me, do you think I could be a lesbian? Do you think I could be this? Do you think? And my response was pretty much, that stuff will play out as you get older. Try to answer it, but whoever it is that you fall in love with, that person's going to be very lucky.
I told my friends, the people that I was closest to at the time first, and then I told this girl that was in my class who is just really gossipy, so that she would tell everyone else for me, so that I didn't have to tell everyone. And then when I came back freshman year, everyone knew because she had told everybody.
We go to something every summer in Provincetown called Family Week, LGBT families and children. Jesse's gone every summer since he's 10 months old. And when we first started going, that first summer, when the group of dads would get together, there might be a dozen of us. Mm-hmm. Now there's a couple of hundred. Wow. So it's very different. Many of us who had adopted back then were older. People who were politically involved, people who were kind of stretching the envelope and trying to change things. Whereas now you'll see a lot of young men, and it's become much more the thing that happens. That was Jesse's 18 years old, so that was 18 years ago.
I think that trans people in the LGBT community, I think that it's very difficult. I have a friend who's trans who performed at a gay pride event and was harassed by some gay men that were there, calling him a he, she, and all these terrible things that you especially would not expect coming from within that community. But there's actually a lot of animosity between people who are in the LGB half of the acronym towards trans people, and I think in some cases, going the opposite way. Also, I think while I think that it's important that trans people are kind of a part of the movement that's happening right now, I think that it's also a little bit confusing because technically, LG and B all refer to sexual orientation, whereas being trans is not necessarily, that doesn't define who you're attracted to. That's just your gender identity. That's your self-expression. So sometimes people get confused, which you can't really blame them because it's not made clear, because it's just kind of grouped together in this acronym.